the moment I stepped out onto the riverbank that morning. Karen Hollingsworth was already screaming my name across the roaring water. "Lucas, this is what happens when you ignore the HOA," she yelled, her short blonde hair whipping the wind as excavators tore into the last standing section of my family's 80-year-old dam. I watched in disbelief as water exploded through the breach, the river surging like a beast released from chains. "Unpaid fees, Lucas," she shouted again, pointing at me with manic authority. "This is the consequence." She had no idea the dam she just demolished controlled every drop flowing toward her own neighborhood. And in 40 seconds, she would understand exactly what she'd unleashed. My name is Lucas Hayes. I'm 32 years old, born and raised in Bend, Oregon, and for the last decade I've worked as an independent hydrology tech, basically a problem solver for rivers that refuse to behave. My family has lived along the Deschutes River since my grandfather built our small hydro dam back in the 1940s. It wasn't a massive structure, nothing like the ones I studied back when I interned for the Army Corps, but it powered our property, protected downstream erosion, and kept the river predictable during spring runoff. It also happened to sit just upriver from a shiny, neatly trimmed HOA neighborhood called Red Willow Bend, a place where people believed freshly pressure-washed driveways were the backbone of society. Karen Hollingsworth ruled that HOA like a battlefield general. If you ever met someone who can turn a simple mailbox complaint into a federal investigation, you already understand Karen. Short, messy blonde hair, sharp voice, bright blazers that could signal aircraft. She stood out like a neon sign you couldn't unplug. For years, she insisted my dam was outdated, ugly, unsightly, or violation adjacent. Whatever that meant. She claimed it disrupted her neighborhood's Riverview experience. She once even tried to fine me for unregulated water behavior, which isn't a real thing anywhere on Earth. But nothing compared to what she did during my daughter's wedding. It was supposed to be a perfect day. Sunlight bouncing off the river, white chairs lined across the grass, family gathering under the big cottonwoods. My daughter wanted the ceremony beside the dam, a symbol of our family's history. We strung lights across the walkway and cleared the overlook. It was a kind of simple, quiet beauty you can't buy. And then Karen showed up. She marched right onto my property in bright red heels, holding a clipboard like a weapon, yelling that the sound of the spillway was ruining her HOA's weekend quiet hours. It was noon, on a Saturday, during a wedding. I escorted her off the property personally, and that was a moment, looking back, I should have known she would seek revenge, because revenge is Karen's favorite hobby. 3 days later, just before dawn, I heard engines rumbling across the river. At first, I thought it was construction for some new HOA project. They were always installing things. Fancy pathways, decorative lampposts, pointless upgrades to make it look like a luxury brochure nobody asked for. But when I stepped outside, coffee mug in hand, I froze. 2 excavators sat directly on the dam's crown. Workers in orange vests were unloading rotary hammers and concrete breakers. A sheriff's cruiser idled nearby with its lights off, like it didn't want to be seen. And Karen, short blonde hair whipping the wind, was standing at the edge of my spillway yelling orders like she owned the river. I didn't even change clothes. I sprinted down the slope toward them, gravel sliding under my boots. As I got closer, one of the excavator arms lifted and swung directly into dam face, concrete cracking like dry bone. "Hey!" I shouted. "What do you think you're doing?" Karen spun toward me, heels sliding slightly on the dusty ground. "You didn't pay your HOA fees, Lucas," she screamed. "This is the consequence. I'm not even in your HOA. That's what the lawyers are checking." "What lawyers?" I yelled back. "The ones authorizing this." Then she waved her arm at the operator. "Keep going." The excavator slammed its bucket again. A jagged line split down the dam. The river surged. The vibration hit my legs like a shockwave. She had no idea what she was unleashing. Karen didn't know that dam controlled flow rates that protected Red Willow Bend from seasonal flooding. She didn't understand hydrology, retention dynamics, or erosion patterns. All she saw was an eyesore she wanted gone. But the river was going to teach her faster than I could. And the moment that breach widened, every home in her precious HOA would become a shoreline property. Not by design, but by disaster. If you've never heard a dam fail in real time, it doesn't sound like Hollywood. There's no single deafening explosion. It's more like listening to a giant breathe its last. A long, agonizing groan of concrete giving up against pressure held back for decades. I reached the spillway platform just as the second excavator slammed its bucket into the center seam. The crack that had started as a thin spiderweb in part one was now a dark, widening wound. "Lucas," one of the workers yelled. "You can't be down here. I own this dam." I barked. He looked at Karen, then back at me, unsure which of us outranked the other. Karen solved it by screaming. "He does not own this structure. The HOA has legal jurisdiction." I stared at her like she'd started speaking Martian. "Karen, this dam has been in my family since before your HOA even had paved roads." "That's irrelevant," she snapped, adjusting her bright coral blazer. "You have unpaid fees, Lucas. You ignored our notices. I'm not part of your HOA." Her eyes narrowed. "You use the river. Our community uses the river. That makes the water a shared concern. And shared concerns fall under HOA Environmental Authority." I couldn't help it. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I'd never heard someone combine so many wrong ideas in such a short sentence. "Karen," I said, "you can't just invent water laws." "I can," she shouted, stabbing the air with a neon pink clipboard. And I did. Behind us, the excavator operator revved his engine. I ran forward, waving my arms. "Stop. That dam regulates downstream gradient. You'll flood your own people." The operator hesitated. Karen didn't. "Don't listen to him. He's trying to scare you. Keep going." The bucket dropped again. Boom, crunch. Concrete dust shot upward in a glowing sunlit cloud. The river responded instantly. A jet of water burst through the breach, foaming white and violent. It hit the lower rocks with a roar, spraying mist over my face. I could feel the river's temperature drop as cold snowmelt surged forward. That was the moment the worker realized something was wrong. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, "this flow looks unstable. If we crack the lower section." "You're fine," Karen barked. "Just do your job." I pointed at the whirlpool forming below the breach. "Look at that vortex. Do you see how fast that's spinning? That means the river's pressure gradient just shifted. If that wall collapses..." It collapsed. Not all the way. Just enough. A whole sheet of concrete sheared off and fell forward like a massive gray tooth being pulled out. Water blasted through the gap in a roaring surge, spraying the excavator and making the operator yank back in panic. The sheriff stepped forward, hand on his belt. "Ma'am, I think we should call this off." "No!" Karen shrieked. "Finish the job." The river didn't wait for the debate. The flow rate doubled, then tripled, then accelerated so fast the water foamed like a monster tearing free of a cage. I watched as the first wave barreled downstream toward Red Willow Bend. The neighborhood Karen ruled like a kingdom. I didn't need a calculator to estimate the damage. I'd done those simulations 100 times. Remove the dam without proper step gradient reductions, and the river would reclaim its natural curve, cutting straight across the lowest cul-de-sacs. "Karen," I said quietly, "you've just put your entire neighborhood underwater." She blinked. "What?" "Your precious HOA," I said, pointing at the accelerating surge, "is about to become a waterfront community." Her face drained of color. "What? No, 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 and no." She spun toward the sheriff. "Stop the water." "It doesn't work like that," I said. "It isn't a faucet." Karen whirled on the workers. "Block it. Build something. Put something there." "Ma'am," one of them said carefully, "this is a river." I watched her realize, finally, what she had done. For the first time since I'd known her, Karen Hollingsworth stopped shouting. The river took over for her. It thundered past us, carrying branches, debris, and the consequences she'd unleashed. The sun glinted off the rushing water, brightly illuminating her mistake in a way even she couldn't ignore. There was no undoing it now, and this was only the beginning. The first mile of river below the dam is quiet. Wide bends, shallow shelves, cottonwoods leaning over like they're eavesdropping on the current. Normally, it's peaceful enough that you can hear trout break the surface. But that morning, the Deschutes didn't whisper, didn't hum. It roared. The surge from the breach hit the first bend like a freight train. I could hear it from the bank. Deep, rolling thunder. Karen heard it too. She turned toward the noise, her bright coral blazer whipping in the wind like a warning flag. What is that sound?" she stammered. "That," I said, "is your mistake picking up speed." Her jaw dropped as a wave rounded the bend, brown, foaming, carrying logs, branches, broken chunks of my dam, and a fury nature rarely shows unless provoked. "No, no, no," she whispered, clutching her clipboard to her chest. "This can't, no. It can't reach Red Willow. We're elevated. You're not elevated, I said. You're landscaped. There's a difference. Karen snapped her head toward me. I know the elevation charts. Your elevation charts are from the HOA welcome packet, I said. Mine are from the U.S. Geological Survey. She blinked fast, like the words physically stung. The sheriff ran up beside us, radio crackling in his hand. We've got reports of the lower cul-de-sac taking water. It's rising fast. Karen went pale. What? That's impossible. Red Willow Bend has premium flood insurance ratings. Ratings don't stop water, I said. But... She whirled on me, hand shaking, voice cracking under the pressure. You should have warned us. I did, I said. 2 years ago. In writing. 8 pages. Your board rejected it because it interfered with aesthetic continuity. Remember that phrase? Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She remembered. I'd sent diagrams, gradient projections, hydrology models, even photos of erosion patterns creeping toward their walking trails. The HOA sent back a letter saying my dam visually polluted the river's charm and requested I consider voluntary removal. Well, they removed it, voluntarily or otherwise. Now the river was removing them. Karen suddenly took off running toward her SUV. I need to get home. I need to get home now. The sheriff grabbed her arm. Ma'am, the road's flooded out already. You won't make it through. What? She thrashed. My house, my furniture, my subscriptions. Everything is in there. Subscriptions. Not safety. Not people. Subscriptions. That's your concern? I asked, stunned. She shot me a wild glare. People depend on my house being perfect. It's the example home. It sets the standard. Behind us, the river's roar grew louder. Then we heard something else. Sirens. Multiple. Fire trucks, county emergency vehicles, and police cruisers converged on the lower end of Red Willow Bend. The sun glinted off their roofs as they bounced over the river trail, tires splashing through muddy water. I sprinted up the ridge trail that overlooked the neighborhood. Karen chased behind me, panting, her heels slipping in the dirt. When I reached the top, my stomach dropped. Red Willow Bend, normally pristine, shiny, and painfully perfect, was drowning. Water surged through the cul-de-sacs, swirling around ornamental stone mailboxes, and climbing up the manicured lawns Karen bragged about at every HOA meeting. Backyard patios disappeared under muddy current. Decorative garden lights flickered underwater like tiny drowning fireflies. A golden retriever barked from a porch. Confused, the water climbing its steps. Karen clutched her head. Oh my God, this isn't real. This is hydrology, I said quietly. It's always real. Residents, people with lawn signs reading HOA Pride starts here, were now dragging patio furniture out flood, shouting, panicking. A family fought to push their SUV up a driveway as the surge reached the wheel wells. The same neighbors who voted to keep my dam under review were now knee-deep in the consequences. Karen fell to her knees, hands in her hair, the sunlight painting her blazer a brilliant, tragic pink. I didn't know, she whispered. Yes, I said. That's the problem. Lucas, my home. You destroyed the thing that kept it dry. The sheriff joined us at the ridge. County's calling a state of emergency. We've got 20 houses taking water. Crews are evacuating people now. Karen turned to him, broken, mascara streaking. Please fix it. He shook his head. We can't fix a river. Karen looked at me, clinging to a hope she didn't deserve. Can you fix it? You're the engineer. I stared down at the rushing water below. I can't fix what you destroyed, I said, but I can tell you this. She swallowed hard. This is only the first wave. The color drained from her face again, because she knew I wasn't talking about water anymore. I've witnessed floods before. I've built levees, stabilized riverbanks, reinforced culverts. I've walked knee-deep through storm runoff in Spokane, helped redirect overflow in Coeur d'Alene, and stood in waders for 10 hours straight in Idaho after spring melt nearly took out an entire town. But I had never seen anything like what started unfolding in Red Willow Bend that morning. The first house to get hit was the one closest to the trail bend. White siding, a neat little porch, potted flowers that always looked too perfect to be real. The surge at the steps like a battering ram, lifting lawn furniture and swirling it away like driftwood. A sedan, left parked with its nose toward the river, floated backward as the water crept under the tires. I ran down the bank, shouting warnings, but the river was louder. Most neighbors woke up to the kind of panic you only hear in disaster documentaries. Shouts, slammed doors, feet pounding downstairs. A man in his bathrobe stood on his patio staring at the water as if disbelief could stop the current. "Lucas!" A voice shrieked across the street. Karen, short, messy blonde hair, today in a neon orange blazer, so bright it cut through the sunlight. She splashed toward me, heels abandoned in the mud, hair flying, mascara streaking. "You caused this." She jabbed her finger at me. Standing ankle deep in water like accusation alone could dam the river. "I warned you," I shouted over the roar. "You destroyed the only structure holding back this surge." She stomped closer, hands trembling with fury. "You lied. You sabotaged the dam. You." A sudden boom cut her off. Not an explosion. A collapse. Further upstream, one of the old retaining walls, still partially tied to the dam system, gave out from the pressure shift. The entire slab folded inward like it was made of cardboard. A thick wave thundered down the channel and smashed into the HOA's decorative footbridge, snapping in half and carrying away like a broken toy. People screamed. Someone shouted to grab kids. A golden retriever barked from the roof of a minivan. I sprinted to higher ground, grabbing a woman by the arm and pulling her away from a rushing eddy that could easily swallow a person. Firefighters arrived from Bend within minutes. Waiters, ropes, poles, bright jackets cutting through the chaos. One recognized me. "Lucas, you know the system. Where's the safest line?" "East fence." I yelled. "Creek bend on the ridge. Fastest exit out of the current." They directed families toward the slope. I helped an elderly man climb into the back of a high-clearance truck. A firefighter tossed me a spare radio. Then Karen grabbed the front of my flannel shirt with both fists. "You're fixing this right now," she screamed in my face. "Do something." Her voice cracked, not with threatening authority anymore, but with fear. "Karen," I said, breath sharp, "I need you to understand something. Water doesn't care about HOA bylaws. You took out the controlling structure. This is physics." "No. You're doing this," she sobbed, shaking. "You want US to drown." I pried her hands off me. "Get uphill," I told her, "or you will." Before she could spit another accusation, a massive whirl of water wrapped around a hydrangea hedge and ripped it out of the ground. The current surged up her driveway. She looked back at her house. The picture-perfect lawn, the porch swing, the professionally trimmed hedges. Her kingdom was disappearing. The moment reality hit her was almost visible. A freeze in her eyes as everything she fought for slid under muddy water. Then, with a trembling breath, she turned and ran toward the firefighters. The catastrophe escalated faster. Joggers filmed from the ridge. Neighbors cried. Pickup truck tires spun in mud. Emergency sirens echoed across the canyon. Water hammered the street, peeling up asphalt. Cars drifted sideways like slow-motion wreckage. I stood in the middle of it all, the only person who understood the river's full rage and felt bitterness twist into something colder. This didn't have to happen. This was not a natural disaster. This was engineered chaos by the woman who believed she controlled everything. But now, the river controlled Red Willow Bend. And Karen was finally learning the cost of her own arrogance. Because this flood wasn't just destroying houses. It was destroying her power. By the time the flood peaked, half the Red Willow Bend neighborhood looked like a lakeside resort built by amateurs. Only the rooftops remained consistent. Everything else was shifting, tilting, drifting, or sinking under rushing brown water. Firefighters' emergency units had taken over the Ridge Road, and command tent formed fast. Clipboards, radios, maps, and exhausted voices trying to organize chaos. I stood beside a rescue truck, mud soaking through my jeans, adrenaline still burning hot. Then Karen found me, not running, not sobbing, not broken, composed, too composed. She stepped under the makeshift canopy, blazer-stained, hair erect, mascara streaked. But there was something icy in her expression now, something calculating. And that's when I noticed the cameras. Local Bend News vans, tripods being set up, microphones attached, reporters adjusting their hair, drones buzzing overhead, capturing the disaster from several angles. Karen was about to perform. She marched toward me with the same stiff stride she used during HOA meetings, the kind that screamed I'm in charge even when I'm wrong. "There he is," she shouted, pointing at me, voice sharp enough to cut through the chatter. The man responsible for all this. Several firefighters turned. A reporter lifted her mic. A cameraman zoomed in. I froze. Karen continued, stepping directly in front of the cameras like she had been preparing this speech for weeks. This individual, she yelled, waving at me as if presenting evidence, purposefully neglected the structural integrity of that dam. He ignored safety protocols. He caused a collapse that flooded our community. I blinked. She was rewriting reality faster than the river had rewritten the landscape. You demolished a dam, I said, stepping forward, on my property illegally. Her smile went thin and venomous. No, I didn't, she snapped, voice rising theatrically. We were performing authorized maintenance due to outstanding HOA fees. Fees he's been dodging for years. A murmur rippled through the crowd. One firefighter whispered, "Is that true?" Reporter microphones pointed toward me. I shook my head. I'm not part of their HOA. They don't own my land. They don't own the dam. They had no authority. Karen threw her hands up dramatically. He's lying. He forged documents claiming ownership of the river frontage. He's been running an unlicensed hydro facility. I almost laughed. Almost. But anger crushed the humor instantly. I'm a certified hydrology tech. I said, calm but sharp. This dam is grandfathered by federal water rights. My family has owned it for 80 years. Karen stepped closer, eyes wide with desperate outrage. That dam was a public safety hazard, she screamed. And now he's trying to blame me to avoid criminal charges. Criminal charges. She said it like she believed it. Because she needed to believe it. But then, the twist. A deputy sheriff walked up behind us, holding a clipboard. He cleared his throat. Ma'am, we reviewed property records. Karen turned, smile freezing. The deputy looked at me. The dam and the river frontage are legally his. Have been since 1946. Karen's jaw tightened. And the deputy continued, he's not part of Red Willow Bend HOA. Your jurisdiction doesn't extend onto his land. A reporter raised her mic at Karen. Ma'am, did you authorize demolition on private property? Karen didn't answer. Another reporter chimed in. Did you order the excavators? Did you sign the work order? Karen's breathing became uneven. She wasn't yelling now. She wasn't pointing. She was cornered. This is harassment, she hissed. Those documents are wrong. We have alternate filings. Our lawyers. Your lawyers, the deputy cut in, were hired after the incident. The cameras caught every word. Karen's face drained of color. Her kingdom was collapsing even faster than her neighborhood. She stepped back, searching for anyone, to support her. But when she turned, all she saw were soaked, shivering residents staring at her with a mixture of betrayal and dawning realization. Her voice cracked. This isn't my fault, she whispered. He made the water do this. I met her eyes. Water doesn't take sides, I said, but actions do. Her lip trembled. She looked like she might yell again, one more desperate scream to reclaim control. Instead, she broke. Karen pushed past the reporters, stumbling uphill through mud toward the abandoned golf cart path, not running from the flood, running from the truth. And the cameras followed her, because for the first time in her life, Karen Hollingsworth was the villain of her own neighborhood. If previous part was a public collapse of Karen's authority, this part was a quiet beginning of something far more dangerous. Because once the cameras left and the neighborhood settled into a soggy, powerless silence, the real battle began, not in the water, but on paper. I drove home along the muddy service road, my truck slipping twice where ground had softened into thick silt. The river was still roaring, but lower now, less violent, more exhausted, kind of like me. Inside the house, I peeled off my wet flannel, brewed strong coffee, and laid out the folder that had been sitting in my desk drawer since the day my father died. The original dam plans, the water rights deeds, the 1946 land survey, the riparian maps signed by the Army Corps, the maintenance logs I'd kept my entire adult life. Every sheet of paper smelled like the past. Ink, dust, and the river. I spent 2 hours building a chronological stack, so airtight it could choke an argument. Not because I was worried about my innocence, but because I knew Karen. She was going to fabricate something, invent fees, invent ownership, invent unregulated water hazards. She'd turn a tragedy into a political platform if it meant avoiding blame. By noon, the knock finally came. Sheriff's deputy. Clipboard. Neutral expression. Mr. Hayes, he said, we need a formal statement for the county investigation. I nodded and invited him inside. We spent 40 minutes walking through everything, from the wedding incident to the excavators to the retaining wall collapse. When he left, he looked tired. Between you and me, he said, This whole thing smells like trouble for the HOA. Trouble? I asked. He exhaled. Lawsuits, insurance disputes, federal involvement. It's going to get messy. But messy was an understatement, because at 3:40 p.m., my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a smooth, clipped voice spoke. Mr. Hayes, this is Attorney Robert Langley, counsel for Red Willow Bend HOA. My client, Ms. Hollingsworth, has informed us of damages to community properties stemming from the collapse of your structure. We'll need your cooperation in resolving liability. Liability. I rubbed my forehead. Your client demolished a dam that didn't belong to her. He cleared his throat. Ms. Hollingsworth states that the structure was abandoned, hazardous, and subject to enforcement due to unpaid community assessments. There are no community assessment on my land, I replied, and the dam was under active maintenance. A pause. Then, well, her story says otherwise. Of course. Karen was already rebuilding her fantasy. If she's making this a legal fight, I said, I'll meet her in court. There was a shift in his tone, sharp, amused, condescending. Oh, she's counting on that. He hung up. I stared at the phone for a long moment. I'd expected lies. I hadn't expected confidence. Confidence meant she thought she had something. A forged document, a fake inspection letter, a hired expert who would claim the dam was unstable. Karen didn't just fight dirty. She fought like someone who believed rules only applied to other people. But I wasn't other people. That night, I drove back to what remained of the dam. The sun was sinking orange behind the Cascades, lighting the fractured concrete like a broken monument. The smell of wet soil and churned mud filled the air. Water spilled through the breach, quieter now but still dominant. Still a voice with something to say. I stood on the bank with a flashlight and noticed something wedged between the broken slabs. A folder, waterlogged, half-buried, stuck in a crack. I waded into the shallows and pulled it free. Inside were copies of forms, HOA forms, stamped signatures, maps, a letter addressed to the county claiming emergency authority over unregulated water structures. The signature at the bottom? Forged. Not mine. Not even close. Karen hadn't just lied. She created paperwork to back the lie. I held the dripping folder under the fading light as my heartbeat slowed into something colder, steadier. The kind of calm that comes just before a decisive blow. Karen thought she knew the river. Karen thought she understood control. Karen thought she could rewrite physics, law, history, and ownership all in one reckless swing. But this folder? This was the beginning of her end. And she had no idea that the next place she'd be standing wasn't a flooded neighborhood. It was a courtroom. My courtroom. Courtrooms have a smell, old wood, paper, and the faint metallic chill of consequences. I've spent enough time in them to recognize the atmosphere of a case before anyone speaks. And on the morning of the Red Willow Bend hearing, the air felt electric. Reporters filled the left rows. Flood victims, dozens of them, filled the right. Some had mud-stained jeans. Some wore boots still caked with silt. The HOA board sat stiffly behind their attorney, pretending confidence. Then Karen entered. Short, messy blonde hair aggressively curled, bright fuchsia blazer. Heels clicking with the desperation of someone trying to look composed after losing everything. Her eyes darted around the room, scanning for allies, defenders, anyone who might still believe her version of reality. She found none. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside the county counsel. I wasn't suing for money. I was suing for accountability, and to formally expose the fraud she tried to bury under floodwater. When the judge walked in, the room settled. Papers rustled. A reporter whispered into a mic. Karen crossed her legs with exaggerated dignity, raising her chin like a queen in exile. The judge adjusted her glasses. Case number 48 to 112. Red Willow Bend Homeowners Association versus Lucas Hayes, and countersuit Hayes versus Hollingsworth and Red Willow Bend HOA. Opening statements. Mr. Langley? Karen's attorney stood, polished, confident, rehearsed. Your Honor, the HOA was forced to remove a dilapidated, dangerous dam that posed imminent threat to our client community. Mr. Hayes ignored multiple notices, refused mandated safety repairs, and operated an unlawful water control structure without municipal approval, resulting in catastrophic flooding. Some neighbors murmured. Then my turn. I stood slowly. Your Honor, I said, the dam didn't fail. It was destroyed. I held up the folder, the one I pulled from the broken concrete, and it was destroyed under false authority. The judge gestured. Continue. I laid the soaked, carefully dried papers on the evidence projector, stamped HOA forms, fabricated emergency claims, maps redrawn to include land that wasn't theirs, a forged signature, my name spelled incorrectly. The courtroom rippled like a hell breath breaking. Karen stiffened, jaw tightening, eyes darting like trapped prey. I flipped to the next page. The original 1946 water rights deed. Then the Army Corps classification. Then the maintenance logs. Then the photo timestamp minutes before demolition. Karen standing on my dam, pointing at the excavators. Red Willow Bend. I said calmly, unlawfully trespassed, unlawfully ordered demolition, and caused a preventable hydrological disaster. I didn't break the river. They did. My attorney sat back with a barely contained smile. The judge turned to Karen. Ms. Hollingsworth, please rise. She did, shaking. Did you order demolition of Mr. Hayes' dam? Aye, we, the HOA board, she swallowed. We believed. Answered directly. Her voice trembled. Yes. A collective exhale filled the room. Did you have authority? Karen blinked fast. I thought the land was within association boundaries. On what basis? She froze. Her attorney jumped in. Your Honor, the HOA acted under information they believed to be accurate. And who created that information? I asked. The judge held up a hand. Mr. Langley, please answer. The attorney hesitated. Then, Ms. Hollingsworth supplied the documents. Silence. Karen's shoulders curled inward like collapsing steel. The judge leaned back, face stern. Ms. Hollingsworth, your false filings misled contractors, county responders, and your own neighborhood. Your actions directly resulted in extensive property damage and public safety risk. Reporters typing filled the room like rainfall. Karen choked a breath. This isn't fair, she whispered. I was protecting the community. The community, the judge interrupted, is who you endangered. The gavel struck once. In light of forged documents, unauthorized demolition, and reckless endangerment, the court sides with Mr. Hayes. Damages, cleanup reimbursement, and civil penalties will be filed against Ms. Hollingsworth and Red Willow Bend HOA. Additionally, referral for criminal investigation will be issued immediately. Karen collapsed into her seat. Tears, disbelief, panic, all tangled into one defeated spiral. The judge wasn't done. And the HOA is hereby ordered to fund full restoration of the dam. Several neighbors turned to me with relief, gratitude, even guilt. Some apologized under their breath. I nodded to each of them. But as I walked out of the courtroom, sunlight pouring onto the courthouse steps, I realized something. The river didn't destroy Karen. She did. All I did was let the truth flow. When I stood on those courthouse steps, watching sunlight spill across a neighborhood still rebuilding, I realized something simple. Water always finds the truth, and eventually so does justice. The dam will rise again, stronger than before. The river will run steady. And the people who tried to control what they didn't understand will finally face the consequences they earned. If you want more stories like this, more truth, more twists, more justice served, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. There's always another battle waiting on the horizon, and I'll be here to tell it.